Hey, good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of PT on Ice. My name's Jason London. I am faculty with the Endurance Athlete Division, teaching both or all Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner Live, Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner Online, and the Professional Bike Fitting course. And here I'm re-recording this morning. I was just live on YouTube and realized the Instagram live was not working. So looks like we're up and running now. So thank you for your patience for those of you who are tuning in live here. So what I want, a couple Endurance Athlete Division announcements. Megan Peach will be in Casper, Wyoming this weekend teaching Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner Live. It's a mouthful. And then we're currently in our third cohort of the year for the online course for Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner, and we'll be starting our fourth cohort towards the end of July. So join us for that if you get a chance. And our next bike fitting course will be in Fort Collins this fall. So super stoked to get back out to Colorado for that. So join us for those if you have an interest in treating endurance athletes, and would be happy to have you. But what I want to talk about today is increasing performance in cyclists. And really one way to do that is really looking at, what is the body of the cyclist in front of us and how does that affect their positioning. So timely subject here with the Tour de France coming up here in a little under a month, where you'll really be able to see the top of the top on their bike and see the position that they're in. And one thing that you'll likely notice is that their bars are quite a bit lower than their saddle, meaning that their seat will be up high and their shoulders will be down low. And this is, traditionally thought to really increase performance for cyclists, maybe give them a little bit of an aerodynamic advantage. And, that's why we see so many elite cyclists in that position. And what we see with recreational cyclists is they a lot of times try to emulate that position, and that causes issues, particularly for low back pain, which is, the number one or number two, depending on the study that you're looking at, pain complaint or injury for cyclists is lower back pain. So not only do we want to, a lot of times are we addressing that with looking at where their handlebar height is, but we can maybe prevent that by getting the cyclist in the right position. But what we're really talking about today is increasing performance, and does bar drop actually lead to increased performance? Well, there was a study in 2021 by Holliday and colleagues looking at just that, and had a group of elite cyclists and looked at power output as well as VO2 max or efficiency over different settings of where the bar height was. And what they found was that the lower the bars were, so the greater the differential between the saddle height and the bar height, the increased power the cyclists were able to generate, as well as increased efficiency. And then looking also at the anthropometrics of the cyclists, is those cyclists who had greater hamstring length or greater hamstring flexibility, as measured with our kind of standard supine hip at 90-90, looking at knee joint angle at that. Those cyclists with greater hamstring length were able to get into a more aggressive position, or a greater bar drop position. So leading them to conclude that hamstring flexibility and bar drop are really important for performance with cyclists. And Muir, in another observational study in 2016, compared elite cyclists to mountain bikers and non-cyclists, and found that elite cyclists compared to non-cyclists and mountain bikers had increased hamstring length, leading them to conclude that hamstring length was likely an important factor for performance in cycling. So for cyclists now, we're talking about road cycling, road bikers, Tour de France style. Also thinking about gravel biking, which is basically kind of a modified road bike where you're just riding over dirt roads and sometimes single track. And that is a really expanding race category, particularly in the U.S. And then also thinking about time trial and triathlon. So those are the cyclists where we're really looking at to increasing that bar drop to increase power, and potentially looking at doing that with cross-country mountain bike racers as well. So that's kind of the population that we're thinking of intervening with. And how do we get there? Well, in that 2016 study by Muir, that was that observational study, and found that elite cyclists had greater hamstring flexibility compared to mountain bikers and non-cyclists. They proposed or postulated that just time on the bike is going to increase hamstring length, that basically your body is going to adapt to the position over time, and one of those adaptations is getting greater hamstring length. And that while it's not a prospective study, that makes sense. And so in bike fitting, we talk about doing a serial fitting with our cyclists. So a lot of times I'll get a lot of people in at the beginning of the season. I live in a mountain community where it's really a ski town. So in the winter, most people are either Nordic skiing or backcountry skiing or downhill skiing. So not a lot of fat bikers in the winter, though they are growing. And then a pretty small segment of people are spending a lot of time on the trainer during the winter. Most times when they're on the trainer, they're going to be in a more upright position. So seeing them at the beginning of the spring, where they may not be at their peak performance, and ideally they're not, because their race season hasn't started yet, and we'll get them into a position which usually is going to be a little bit more of an upright position than the position we were talking about earlier. So that bar drop will be a little bit will be a little bit lower, so the bars will be higher, closer to the saddle height. But then talk to the patient about, hey, come back in 6 to 8 weeks, and likely, your body is going to have adapted to the position on the bike, and you'll be able to get into a more aggressive position, and this should increase your performance. So come back and we can take a look at your fit again and adjust that over the course of the season. And I do have some patients that do that, but typically I like to send them home with something to work on too, so that maybe they can get into that more aggressive position more quickly. And so static stretching is a mode to do that. Static stretching, as I'm sure you all are aware, there's a ton of research studies looking at that, and some studies showing that maybe doesn't increase mobility as much as we think, and maybe actually hinders performance. But there's a bulk of evidence showing that static stretching does increase mobility and can increase hamstring or muscle length, in this case hamstrings. And really, to do that, you're looking at, if you're really looking to truly increase tissue length, to do prolonged stretching, so holds of 3 minutes, or holds that add up to 3 minutes. So I'll send, if we're talking about hamstrings, send them home with doing leg up the wall or legs up the wall for either 3 holds of a minute or 1 hold of 3 minutes. And then another mode of getting increased mobility is with eccentrics, and really those lengthening contractions and putting those tissues under load to increase mobility. And Eric Chaconis reviewed a really nice meta-analysis that came out just a month ago, and in a PT on Ice just a couple of weeks ago. I think it was May 24th. So go check that out for more specifics. But there's another meta-analysis from 2020 in the Journal of Athletic Training, looking specifically at using eccentrics for hamstring length, and actually also looking at do eccentrics cause architectural changes to the hamstring as well, specifically the biceps femoris. And this looked at pooled 4 different studies and found that with a minimum of 4 weeks, yes, we do see increases in hamstring length, as well as, kind of cool, all these studies either had MRI or ultrasound imaging and found that architectural changes occur to the muscle as well to allow it to accommodate that length as well as increase strength. So eccentrics is a really good way to improve mobility. And then here at ICE, we're and not or philosophy, so why not use all three? So again, typically for talking about cyclists now, but you can certainly apply this to other patient populations where you're trying to gain mobility, is give them a low load, long duration stretch. So kind of moderate intensity stretch, not where they're having to hold their breath, not where they're getting that really good stretch burn, but just a moderate stretch, and having them hold that for 3 minutes or do 3 sets of a minute. But then following that up with some loading and some eccentric loading. The studies, both I think the meta-analysis that Chaconis covered, as well as that meta-analysis I talked about from Journal of Athletic Training, most of those studies looked at Nordic hamstring curls as a way to get that eccentric training down. And that certainly works. You do need a partner for that, so sometimes that can be a little bit difficult for patients to do and implement at home. However, there's other modes to eccentrically load the hamstrings too, and a great mode of that is doing RDLs or Jefferson curls and so that's typically what I'm doing with my patients for looking at hamstring length, is giving them that 3-minute hamstring stretch, following that up with some loaded RDLs to then further use that length that they maybe gained with doing the stretching, and then even gain more length with that. But really important to load up so that they're building strength with that and can control that mobility. And then also, if it's a cyclist, talking to them about a serial fitting or changing their position gradually over the course of the season as their body is adapting and increasing that hamstring length and getting into a more aggressive position, as it has been shown to increase power. And so whether they come back in for that, or they can get different stems that can get the bars at different positions is another way to get that. So again, if you're looking to increase performance for cyclists, get those bars lower, but make sure that their body can accommodate that. And generally, they're going to need increased hamstring length for that. So attacking that with a low load, long duration stretch, and then loading it up with eccentrics. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Get out there, enjoy time with friends and family, and we will catch you next time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review, and be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.